All right, let's talk about science. We all think we know what it is, right? But today, we're going to dive into the untold story, the one that's way more interesting than what you'd find in a textbook.
So first things first, we've got to tackle a really common myth about what science is all about and what it's like to actually be a scientist. Yikes. That's a pretty bleak picture, isn't it? It basically paints science as this robotic, joyless task of just collecting facts that are already out there. A tedious job that's literally painful. But you have to ask yourself, is that really it? Does that description even come close to capturing the magic, the excitement of a huge breakthrough? Is science just about observing, or is there something else going on, something a lot more creative? Well, let's flip that idea on its head and look at a totally different way of seeing things. One that sees science not as a chore, but as this amazing creative act.
Now that's more like it. The famous philosopher Karl Popper is basically saying that a big scientific discovery requires the same kind of creative genius as writing a great poem. See, it's not just about finding things, it's about inventing brand new ways of looking at the world.
Now, there's a fancy name for this way of thinking. It's called the historical epistemological approach. I know, it's a mouthful, but the main idea is actually really simple. Science doesn't happen in a vacuum. It's a human story, totally shaped by the culture, the politics, and the big ideas of its day. And what's so powerful about looking at science this way, through this historical lens, is that we see it for what it is, a living, breathing conversation that changes over time. It lets us ask those deeper questions, Like, where do our scientific truths even come from? And what about the ethics of all these new discoveries? So, let's really dig into that link between science and society. Because nothing makes it clearer than looking at science's complicated relationship with power. Just look at this timeline. You can see science has always had this kind of dual nature. In the 17th century, you've got King Louis XIV using it to make his rules seem more legitimate. But then, a century later, during the Enlightenment, science becomes the ultimate tool to challenge power and fight oppression. And then it gets messy again when scientific ideas were twisted to justify absolutely horrible things. The point is, science has never just been a neutral observer on the sidelines. Okay, to make this all feel a bit more real, let's zoom in on one specific field. Our star witness, if you will, is going to be a science that's often in the background but is completely central to our world: chemistry. We often think of physics as the big one, the science of everything. But when you really get down to it, the language we use to actually describe and change the world around us, from the medicines we take to the phones in our hands, is the language of chemistry. And here's what's so cool. Physics and chemistry have these fundamentally different personalities. Physics is all about finding those simple, elegant, universal laws that explain everything. Chemistry, though, it just rolls up its sleeves and dives right into the messy, complicated, beautiful details of it all. It celebrates what makes things unique, not just what makes them the same. And the secret to chemistry's power is right there, at the level of the molecule. Think of it like a giant fork in the road of reality. On one side, you've got particles and atoms. But right at the molecular level, everything splits. It's the point where matter branches into the non-living world of rocks and the amazing living world of cells. See, a molecule isn't just a random clump of atoms. It's a structured thing, and that structure creates this incredible world of millions upon millions of different entities, each with its own name, its own properties, its own story. That's where the complexity of our world comes from, and chemistry is the language that tells that story. So, if this way of looking at science, as this creative, evolving story, is so much more revealing, then why isn't this how we learn it in school? Well, a lot of it really just comes down to tradition. This whole historical view can feel a little abstract, a little disconnected from the daily grind in a lab. And maybe more importantly, our education system often serves up science like it's a finished product, a big book of facts you just have to memorize, instead of showing it for what it is, an unfinished, ongoing, and very human story. And hey, this isn't just some abstract philosophical debate. It has huge, real-world consequences. Just think about that endless argument over natural versus artificial. We have this deep-seated prejudice that anything natural has to be good and anything artificial must be bad. But chemistry gives us a much smarter way to think. Here's the deal. What makes a molecule a medicine or a poison is its structure, not where it came from. I mean, some of the deadliest poisons on Earth are 100% natural, and some of the most life-saving medicines are completely artificial. Understanding that helps us get past the labels and the ideology so we can make decisions based on what's real. And that is a critical thinking skill that every single one of us needs.
And that kind of brings us to the big final thought here. If we start seeing science not as a set of cold, hard facts, but as this creative story that we are all writing together, well, that changes everything. It means we all have a voice, and we all have a responsibility in deciding what that next chapter looks like. What problems do we want to solve? What values are going to guide us? The next chapter is really up to us.